What's up everybody? Welcome back to yet another masterclass. Today we're going to do things a little differently. Last week I released a video called PIZZ Like a Pro, and there were a lot of reactions to this video, a lot of comments, a lot of questions, and also some critical remarks that I would like to address in this video. And the first comment that I want to address comes from Katie Turtell. Great to have such a comprehensive yet quick overview. Thank you for that. I would find it incredibly useful if you ever wanted to do a video on fast pizzicato techniques. Usually when it comes to pizzicato, I like to have the thumb on the fingerboard because that makes the repeats easier, I have to say. I find it rather difficult to keep the focus with the thumb after a certain tempo because we have to bounce back with the wrist. Now, when it comes to really fast pizzicato, I actually like to take the middle finger, stabilize it with the thumb to have quick repercussion with the wrist. And I find, at least for a short period of time, I can sustain that quite well. Now, I'm not sure if with the middle finger you're going to get as rich of a sound like with the first finger, as you can see with my fingers, and that can be completely different for anybody else. I get a much rounder sound, but I guess it doesn't matter if you're going for speed. It is a sort of a motion that we have from spiccato. We might as well use that quick jolt in the wrist for pizzicato as well. I think it's a motion that we already have in our repertoire as cellists. And we got a comment from Ciro Hernandez. I hope I'm saying that name correctly. Can you talk about PIZZ in BRITTEN sonata the next time? Yes, absolutely. For those of you who don't know, it's a movement, scherzo pizzicato. It's a second movement that is only done with pizzicato and with right hand and left hand pizzicato. And as you can see, it is just as important to have a good right hand pizzicato as it is to have good articulation in the left hand to make the pizzicatos speak. When I think of the articulation in the BRITTEN sonata, I think it is really important that we hit the note from a 90-degree angle from the top and remove it parallel to the fingerboard of the bridge. So when you do it quickly and you look from your perspective, you get a clockwise motion. I personally like this way of articulation very much also when it comes just to normal playing. I also take the fingers away sideways and re-articulate them from the top. Which brings me to the next question of Jorge Ivan Vélez Ortiz. I hope I'm pronouncing this name correctly. How do you practice your PIZZ in your daily routine? Do you practice together with scales, arpeggios and everything? That, of course, is always an option to combine pizzicato together with scales. But I think it is more useful to pick a piece of music like the BRITTEN cello sonata, second movement, or, you know, if you want to work on arpeggios, go to Sinfonia Concertante. I rarely found a challenging place in a musical piece that is asking for a scale. So practicing what is actually in demand when it comes to pizzicato, I think is the way to go. So go through the repertoire, BRITTEN, Prokofiev, or for example, you could also go to the cadenza of the Shostakovich cello concerto. What I think is especially good about taking that spot, if you remember in my last video, I was talking about balancing the chord. And of course, with this chord, you want to emphasize the middle voice. So the way to do that is to make the last joint of the first finger a little bit more firm than the thumb and the middle finger. And that way you pronounce the middle voice stronger. Yeah, and also experiment with different position on the fingerboard. Obviously, is going to be much more harsh and it's going to be much more soft. With pizzicato, what is really important to keep in mind, especially if you're going to play a piece like Shostakovich Concerto or Prokofiev Sinfonia Concertante, pizzicatos never carry as well as arco passages. So if it says piano and pianissimo, like in Shostakovich, think at least mezzo forte, mezzo piano in order to really project with those notes. Otherwise, people are just gonna see a movement, but they're not gonna hear any sound. So projection in pizzicato is really vital. Philip D is saying, if you're being honest, the main difference in sound between the two styles of PIZZ probably originates from the general point of contact of the PIZZ, which is much closer to the bridge and thus to the center of the string in the second PIZZ, right? And just for the folks that haven't seen the video yet, I was comparing this kind of pizzicato to this kind of pizzicato. What I was trying to show, though, is that it's not only a matter on how close you are to the bridge, but what your angle of pizzicato actually is going to be. Because what you could also do is just pitch here. And then I find that is getting a little bit too thin and too crass in sound. So I prefer the C string to be actually higher because I get a much warmer, bigger bass. And then I get a punchy top voice. Yeah? So I think mixing the chord in that way that you have a little bit more of a blooming bass and a little bit of a sharper top is going to give the chord more plasticity and also going to make it more interesting, in my opinion. However, there was also a critical comment and unfortunately it got deleted. So I encourage you to leave the critical comments under the videos because they, of course, spice up our conversation. I can only paraphrase. There are many ways of doing pizzicato and limiting yourself to one way actually is counterproductive, and there are many colors and ways to do pizzicato. And I can only wholeheartedly agree. I felt that this way of doing arpeggio was helpful in sort of a general way if you wanted to make your chord bigger and more pronounced. If you'd like, please post a video of other suggestions, how to play pizzicato, how to play chords, how to change the colors. This is not a one-way street. I'm learning as much, hopefully, as you do, and I enjoy our exchange. So critical comments are very much welcome, as always. And thank you for tuning in to this masterclass, which today was more of a masterclass for me, learning from what you are interested in. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing you next Monday for our next masterclass. Bye.